here for just a second. The Lieutenant Governor of the state of Michigan, Gilchrist, is making his way down the porch here, and as we've arrived here at just a little ahead of 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Fortunately, he's got a little bit of time for us, and I know exactly as he's getting his microphone on the first topic that I want to discuss with him.
I know where this is going.
Because it came last night at, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 11 p.m. as I spotted him inside one of the newest establishments here on Mackinac Island, a Detroit pizza operation, because Detroit pizza, of course, is now gone everywhere. And I got to see him order it. I did not get to see the review. And Garland, like myself, we fancy ourselves Detroit pizza experts. So, Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist, it is really good to have you on the program.
Good to see you, Devin.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Give me the review. How was it?
So, it's called Mackinac Island Pizza Company.
Right.
They have Detroit-style pizza here on Mackinac Island. And while my favorite Detroit-style pizza is Michigan and Trumbull, as we discussed.
Yes, it's very good.
The Mackinac Island Pizza Company is doing pretty well.
Okay.
It was good.
You and I were standing at the glass.
And they got the cheese right. They got the cheese right on the edge. Absolutely.
You've got to have the lace.
Yes.
As I call it.
The
lace of crisp cheese around the edge, and they seem to have that master.
They did. It was great. They're doing great. Whoever the chef is that brought that recipe to the island did a fantastic job. I think they're going to have a really great business.
One of the more important exports from the Motor City that's going on right now. You can find it everywhere. Los Angeles, New York, Florida. I've seen it in so many different places.
That's
now.
right.
It's really great. So tell me a little bit about how these 2 days, really 3 days now, have been for you here on the island, and this focus that you and the governor have really an intense focus. It's funny. I keep saying it's overly simplistic to say we're talking about growth, because isn't that what politics and business is always about? But given what we understand now about population and where we are in Michigan versus the rest of the country, it's a different kind of conversation about growth.
Yeah, I think that there's a unique consensus this year around the fact that we all have a role to play in growing our state in responsible and strategic ways. And for the governor and I, that means that growth includes a demonstration that there's a place for everybody in Michigan's future. And I think we've heard from some amazing experts from around the state and around the country during these last couple of days about some of the nuances of what we've experienced with our slowing population growth, or in some cases decline, in the state of Michigan. And one thing I've been really struck by, maybe because it was personal, is that we heard from Richard Florida, and he talked about the fact that overall Michigan, and to use Detroit as another example, retains talent at a pretty decent clip. But there are specific sectors or specific people with specific types of training and education that we've tended to lose in greater numbers. And he specifically called out, so he called out computer science and computer engineering majors, for example. And these are people who are key to growing the sort of technology future of our economy. Now that hit me as a computer science major from Michigan who did leave the state to pursue professional opportunities and was ultimately gone for 9 years before I came home. And so I've been reflecting on that personally and want to apply both my personal reflections to what we're doing with the Growing Michigan Together Council, but also thinking holistically about how can people with the kinds of skills and education that we need to grow our economy, how can they choose Michigan to grow their future and their families?
Right.
And we put those things together, and everybody here or represented here has a role to play in that. That's going to be the sweet spot we need to hit.
The fluidity of work is also a really important component here. If I graduated from college 15, 20 years ago and I got a job with Microsoft, it meant I was moving to Seattle. If I got a job with General Motors, it meant I was moving to Detroit. That's no longer necessarily true, right? I mean,
yes.
There's a way for us to sort of start to understand the new realities of work.
And we have a lot of assets that can play to our strengths in Michigan as a result of that. And one of the components of our Make It in Michigan plan that we announced yesterday had to do with making and revitalizing places. So that gives us an opportunity with this fluidity of work, as you describe it, to create, design, and reinvigorate amazing places that people want to live because they have beautiful landscapes, well-maintained streetscapes, good infrastructure, high-speed internet. They have transit and transportation investments that make sense. They have strong schools that are supportive of kids that have different needs. And these, therefore, will be places that people want to live. And if they can work from anywhere because they got fast internet, well, that helps us too. And that's especially important, in northern Michigan, where we are right now, where we have so many beautiful communities that I think people would really enjoy the lifestyle that they can have access to now.
Your life is a good example to sort of examine. I talked to Raphael Washington earlier today about his son leaving the state. Who
was a friend of mine at Michigan. He was at Michigan.
And now doing quite well.
He's doing great.
But I'm curious, so when you graduated, was the idea, I have to leave now to go do what I want to do, or was it, I want to leave Michigan to go do something else? I mean, what was it?
For me personally, it was that I want to be a software professional. And I believe that to be the professional I envision myself being, that needs to happen in this market, which for me was the West Coast, and that was Seattle.
Sure.
I did not want to leave for any reason other than that. I wanted to come back home. I mean, look, when I lived in D.C. after I lived in Washington State, and I literally started this whole effort called Detroit Diaspora to convince other people to move back home, which I ended up doing.
This is your thing.
So yeah, that was important to me, and I recognize that part of my case might have been a little extreme in that regard. But so for me, it was all about economic opportunity, and so that's again why it's important for us to have pathways that we can show are credible for people, regardless of what their interests or ambition are, that it's possible here to have a successful career as a computer software designer, as an architect, as an artist, as a dancer, as a musician, whatever it may be, that you have a path and a chance to success here, that the state of Michigan is going to be a partner. We're going to invest in the training and educational opportunities you may need. We're going to support the cultural institutions that you're going to want to live in proximity to, and that all these things can be the kind of vibrant places that you want to build your future.
I wanted to make sure we talk about Detroit. The mayor yesterday did an insane drill down of about 40 straight minutes on property taxes, which was mind-blowing to a lot of. I mean, I still can't believe that I've lived here this long and had no idea that people were paying $30 a year in taxes on a vacant lot. So it was all mind-boggling, but that really interesting proposal that he's putting forward.
Sure.
We had Richard Florida talking yesterday about the tsunami that he believes. Tsunami. He needs to find a better metaphor, because tsunami is not usually a good thing.
It's not.
But he talked about the tsunami that he thinks that is about to hit in Detroit, like in a big way, in the way that it struck Nashville, where a massive growth is about to happen right now. We've got a lot of talk and plans right now trying to figure out our violence problem. I'm just really curious about your thumbnail on the general health you feel of Detroit right now.
Again, I think the most important question from my perspective as a Detroiter and as Lieutenant Governor that we have to think about with the city is how do we ensure that everybody participates in the progress. It is undeniable that we're seeing amazing growth and growth potential for parts of the city. And the thing that's exciting about what Richard was describing is the fact that growth can have something for everybody if we are thoughtful about it and do it right. And I think we have the chance to do it in a way that no other city has, frankly. It will look different than it looks in Austin, Texas. It'll look different than it looks even in Nashville. But it can be something that we can be really proud of, because we can say we did it and didn't leave anybody out. We did it and didn't leave anybody behind. And that is the goal that, frankly, is exciting to me as a problem solver. That's the nugget that we need, the nut we need to crack here in Detroit and Michigan. I'm really confident that we can figure it out. And again, I think there's a unique consensus today around the fact that we have to do it in the right way. Progress that excludes people is not progress, because everyone needs to be part of it.
So many conversations about Detroit circle around the idea of affordable housing. And I wonder how sustainable you think that is, that we want certain portions dedicated of all of the new housing developments. We need to have set-asides. But success is what it is. It's a really tricky needle we're trying to thread, because we want success, but once it gets too successful, we force too many people out.
It's interesting, but I think we have to approach this from two directions. So we need to build more affordable housing. I think that is objectively true, and we need to enable more people to be able to afford housing. That is why we need to strengthen how we educate. We need to strengthen how we train. We need to bring the kinds of industries that will demand that will deliver the kind of wages and benefits that people can afford. I want people to be able to afford market rate housing in Detroit. So in order to do that, we have to have the types of jobs available in the city, and that city residents have to be able to hold those jobs. And so that's why I sort of reject the fact that we have to choose between the two of those things. We need to invest in both of them at the same time. And that's what we're trying to do at the state level. So what you've seen is, over the last 2 years, a $250 million investment in affordable housing from the state. The first ever statewide housing plan that has a plan for affordable housing in urban centers like Detroit. And at the same time, you've seen record investment, more money for Detroit public schools where my kids attend than we ever have had in the history of education in Detroit or in the state of Michigan. More money invested in Pathways tuition-free community college. More graduating high school seniors in the city of Detroit, just like 4 out of 5 graduating high school seniors this year in Michigan will qualify for a Michigan Achievement Scholarship that will lead to 2 out of 3 of them starting college in the fall tuition-free when they're pursuing whatever the degrees may be. They will be able to use those degrees that they will earn and finish because of the wraparound supports that we're supporting to be able to then demand higher wages and higher pay to be able to afford the kind of housing that we're looking to build.
Our current problems with K through 12, we now compare horribly with so much of the rest of the country. I told the governor yesterday, it was interesting, when I moved to Michigan 27 years ago, something like that, we were leaving a southern state, and we were leaving for a much better education, we thought, for our kids. I have not heard a great explanation now for why Michigan public education has fallen so fast, so badly. But I'm really curious. This is money is part of it, but we know money's not always the answer to an education. It's a double-edged problem. We're not building the workforce that we need to from within, and we also are going to have trouble attracting families from without until we get this figured out.
I think that this is one of the things underpinning what we need to address from a population standpoint.
Yeah.
Another piece of my story is so I lived in Detroit for the first half of my life. And then for my childhood, and then for the second half, my family moved to Farmington because they wanted to keep me in public schools and wanted to move to the best public school district they could afford. And so that was Farmington Public Schools. For me, as someone, again, whose kids are in Detroit public schools, I want to make sure that not only are we making the investments at the state level to strengthen it, but that also, frankly, I think people's relationships with the teaching profession and respect for it has, I think, changed a lot over the years.
No doubt.
It's a really difficult job that we need to resource and support education professionals in a different way. Part of that is paying them better. And part of that also is making sure that the job we're asking them to do is fair. So there are additional supports that we need to provide for kids in the school setting, like support for their mental, behavioral, and emotional health, helping address the other reasons why they're fighting persistent poverty in their communities that lead to them not being positioned to focus on school when they get there.
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of comprehensive approach necessarily has not been designed and focused on increasing education outcomes and attainment in the way that we hope to address it. And so I think that'll help. And I don't know that we've seen that in those last 27 years in the same way. But we want to take a different approach, and then we're going to make a difference.
Lastly, I always tell people I always leave Mackinac Island and I feel like my brain is about 1 pound heavier because I always learn a lot here. Well, in fact, yes, the thing about the $30 on the vacant lots I'd never heard before. I always learn. I'm curious about what you've learned over the last couple of days that either surprised you or has sort of given you some food for thought.
Well, I alluded to it earlier, the specific group of people that Richard Florida identified that it would have sort of the biggest sort of point of leverage for us to retain as far as people that had these high tech, computer science and engineering degrees.
Right.
And that hit me. I didn't recognize that number, but it hit me hard because he was talking about me. But
you felt exposed.
I did. It was like, wow, okay. Yes, sir. Yeah. But what it did show me though is, when I think about my experience, I think about others who have similar backgrounds to me, who also made the choice that I made to leave and to come home.
Yeah.
I know that the solution is there, and the solution is available to us. And so if I'm leaving I'm leaving the island with confidence that we have the assets and the capabilities to be able to address this in the way that we need to, at the scale that we need to, and I'm eager to dig on that.
So you look around from here, Pretty good asset. It just makes us think about what we have, right?
Right. This helps. We need to make all the videos right now.
That's right. And it now has Detroit pizza. Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist, really appreciate
Thank you,
your time.
Devin.
Always good to talk to you.
Always good to see you, sir.
You too.